Hi there, guys. So, I wanted to pick up on a couple of stories this week about how outside Westminster there's some really good social policy going on. So, firstly, we had a small but significant update from Manchester Council about support for those living with a terminal illness. Now, Manchester Council, they've partnered with the end of life charity Marie Curie to exempt people living with a terminal illness from paying council tax. So, as you can see from the article on screen here, the proposal is that it's going to be a clinician working with the individual. They just have to complete a form online, after which the council tax exemption will apply until that person then passes away. So there's even continuation of the support for the remainder of the financial year after the person's passing, which will obviously be a huge help to that person's family. So this is really good stuff, and it's, as I said, it's going to make a huge difference to people who are in, incredibly stressful and difficult situations and their families. And it's the sort of policy that, although on the face of it, it appears small, this is going to make a huge difference, a practical difference to people's lives. Because when you've got a terminal illness, and when you're at the end of life, your focus needs to be elsewhere. And these sort of practical issues, they affect everybody, but they become secondary when you've got a terminal illness. And and for that reason, I think this is just a really excellent policy from the council here. And this policy in Manchester, this follows on from Andy Burnham's intervention earlier this week in The Guardian, where he outlined what more progressive welfare reform looks like. So if we look at Burnham's piece here, so what he's talking about is how Manchester, Greater Manchester, the city region, they're looking to sort of take a preventative approach to welfare reform. And as you can see here, they're going to be targeting issues like housing, personal debt, and mental health which will support people to get into work and cut the benefits bill. So let's have a quick look at what Andy has to say here. So he's obviously written this piece in response to the government's sort of botched handling of their welfare reform bill. So it should be seen in that context, that he's sort of setting out an alternative vision really for what welfare reform could look like. He's talking here about the people's issues and people's barriers to work are often linked to issues like housing, debt, and mental health. So he says here, from now on, housing will be recognised as preeminent in public policy. Freeing our city region from the grip of the housing crisis will be our number one priority. And then in terms of what that means in practice, Manchester City region, they're looking to reach a tipping point within the next 2 to 3 years of building more social homes than they're losing. So that is an excellent policy, and it's definitely the direction that we need to go in. And then secondly, in terms of prevention, he's talking about a change in how we approach employment support. So he talks here, how is a system which people fear having contact with and often leaves them feeling worse about themselves ever going to help them into work? So it's a very good question. And obviously the answer is it won't. And he mentioned here, obviously, around the years on tough on benefits rhetoric has created a system which people see as being there to trip them up rather than help them out. And that is exactly correct. The system we've got at the moment is not fit for purpose for that very reason. And then finally, he's talking about young people. So, currently, as he mentions here, currently there's 1 million people not in education, employment, or training. So it's an absolutely abysmal sort of situation we've got ourselves into. And I just wanted to finish this video by contrasting what we've just seen there from Burnham and from Manchester Council with what the tired old politicians in Westminster are peddling this week. So last week we had the welfare reform bill going through Parliament, and that was Labour's policy. It was an absolutely dismal policy, and he just tried to remove people from the figures, the numbers, rather than actually support them to have a better life. We've had Reform UK, bleating on about mental health conditions being overdiagnosed, and talking about how they're going to take 15 billion out of the national welfare bill, alongside their rhetoric around the Doge team that they've got. Absolute crap, all of it. And now we've got Kemi Badenoch peddling the same half-truths and propaganda about people on benefits, people getting sickness handouts, as she put it. And I just wanted to show you what she had to say, actually, because it was quite unbelievable, really.
People are receiving disability benefits for having tennis elbow. I know some may disagree with me, but I do not believe that 1 in 4 of us can be considered disabled without the term losing all meaning. And in this new age of diagnoses and self-certification, our sickness benefit system cannot cope. And we are now spending more on sickness benefits than we do on defence.
So, look at what she has to say there. She's not serious in any way. None of the people that I've just mentioned, Starmer and Reeves, Farage and Youssef, Kemi Badenoch, none of these people are serious about even understanding the issues around sickness, long-term health issues, disability and welfare spending, let alone putting in place policies to actually change things for the better. So we seem to be stuck in this sort of paradigm where the politicians in Westminster, they just seek to offer more of the same old crap, demonising the sick, the disabled and the poor, whilst there is some really good policy being proposed and implemented in the regions, but we don't hear anything about it. To finish on a sort of hopeful note, maybe one day we can hope that Burnham will become leader of the Labour Party, and then we can ditch the fiscal conservatism and miserableism that we've got at the moment for something a bit more hopeful. So, I know people out there are absolutely desperate for hope, and there are reasons to be hopeful. So we just need the politicians in Westminster to catch up, really. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you next time.